Hey everyone, and welcome to another Cybersecurity News Deep Dive. Today we're going to really dig into the latest developments and make sure you have all the knowledge you need to stay ahead of the curve. It's a wild world out there, and today's news definitely proves it.
Yeah, it seems like every week there's a new wave of threats coming at us. But today's news really highlights just how aggressive these attackers are becoming and how the attack surface just keeps expanding.
It's crazy, right? Like those Apple Zero Days, CVE 2024-44308 and CVE 2024-44309, just visiting a website could have led to a full device takeover. And what's even more unsettling is this isn't the first time Apple's been slow to disclose vulnerabilities. Remember back in 2021 when they delayed patching a macOS bug for months, even though they knew about active exploits? That caused a lot of problems.
Oh, it definitely did. And these new zero days are particularly nasty because they exploit vulnerabilities in WebKit, the engine that powers Safari and other browsers. Attackers could have injected malicious code or done cross-site scripting, basically gaining control of a user's device just by getting them to visit a compromised website.
So just clicking a link could have been game over. It's pretty terrifying. It makes you realize just how important it is to keep everything updated, even if those update notifications are super annoying.
Absolutely. And it's not just about updating your devices, it's about understanding the bigger picture here. These vulnerabilities show us that there's this constant cat and mouse game going on between security researchers and attackers. Apple's released patches now. But the fact that these zero days were actively exploited means attackers were already a step ahead.
Speaking of being a step ahead, those Palo Alto Network's 0 days involved in that Operation Lunar Peak campaign are a perfect example of attackers going after big targets.
You're absolutely right. Those vulnerabilities are a huge problem for organizations. The PAN-OS firewall is such a critical security component for so many businesses, and these vulnerabilities allow authentication bypass and privilege escalation. It's like a worst-case scenario. Imagine someone gaining control of your entire network's defenses. That's the kind of access these flaws potentially gave attackers.
Wow. So it's not just a data breach, it's like a complete system takeover. And the fact that there's a specific Operation Lunar Peak targeting these vulnerabilities makes it even more scary.
Mhm.
What do we actually know about who's behind it?
Well, unfortunately, details on Lunar Peak are still pretty limited. We know it's highly targeted and it probably involves a pretty sophisticated adversary. But figuring out who's responsible for these attacks is always a challenge. It could be a nation-state actor, a cybercriminal group, or even both working together. The important thing right now is that organizations take this threat seriously. Palo Alto Networks has released patches, but the deadline to apply them is December 9th. Every day that passes without patching is a huge risk.
Okay, let's switch gears for a minute and talk about ransomware. That news about the extradition of the Phobos ransomware operator of Jenny Titsin felt like a big win. But does this actually change anything in the ransomware landscape?
It's definitely a big step. You see, Titsin wasn't just some random hacker. He was a key player in the Phobos operation. And they used the ransomware as a service model. So they were basically selling their ransomware tools to other criminals, making it even easier for less skilled attackers to launch attacks. His arrest is a hit to that whole ecosystem.
So it's like taking down a major supplier in a criminal network. But I guess the demand for ransomware is still there, right? And then you've got Akira, who decided to make a statement by leaking data from 32 victims in just one day. That's pretty aggressive even for ransomware gangs.
It is. And what's even more concerning is the variety of industries they've gone after. Healthcare, finance, education, even critical infrastructure. They're all being hit by Akira. What makes them so dangerous is their speed and how ruthless they are. They hit hard and fast, and they don't give their victims much time to react.
So backups, incident response plans, all that stuff. It's not just theoretical anymore. It's your only hope if you get hit by a group like Akira.
Exactly. And this trend of rapidly leaking data is something we really need to keep an eye on. It's a serious escalation in the ransomware game, putting even more pressure on victims to pay up.
And speaking of escalating, we've got Helldown. This ransomware crew is now targeting Linux and VMware environments. It seems like nowhere is safe.
It is interesting. For a long time, ransomware was mainly focused on Windows systems. But as more and more organizations have adopted virtualized environments, attackers have followed suit. Hell down targeting Linux and VMware shows how they're changing their tactics to take advantage of new opportunities.
And to make things even worse, they're exploiting vulnerabilities like those found in Zyxel firewalls. It's a chain reaction. one vulnerability leading to another.
Yeah, it really highlights how connected all our systems are. A vulnerability in one system can cause a domino effect, leading to breaches in others. That's why patching is so critical, and why organizations need to have a complete understanding of their whole IT infrastructure, not just individual parts.
Okay, so we've got 0 days, ransomware, all pretty scary stuff. But let's not forget about good old-fashioned data breaches. Those are still very much a thing. Maxar Space Systems is dealing with one right now, and they expose some pretty sensitive employee data.
This breach is a good reminder that even organizations with really advanced security measures can be vulnerable. What's particularly troubling about the Maxar breach is that it involved personally identifiable information being taken, like names and social security numbers. That kind of data can be used for identity theft and other malicious activities, causing long-term problems for the people affected.
And the fact that the attack came from a Hong Kong IP address just goes to show that cyber threats don't care about borders. It's a global problem.
It really is, and it shows that we need a global perspective on cybersecurity. Organizations need to be aware of threats coming from all over the world, and they need to have defenses in place to protect against them.
We've covered a lot already, but we're not done yet. There's more news to unpack, so stick with us as we continue this cybersecurity deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive. I know it's a lot to take in, but staying informed is so important if we want to stay ahead of the curve.
It really is. In the midst of all this talk about 0 days and ransomware, there's been some interesting buzz around firewalls. Fortinet's actually predicting a rebound in firewall sales by 2026. It seems a little counterintuitive in this age of cloud, don't you think?
It does at first glance.
Yeah.
But when you look closer, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of companies are realizing that their current firewalls are just too old. They're reaching the end of their support life, and they just can't keep up with all the complex threats out there.
This is like a forced upgrade.
Exactly, and it's not just about replacing old hardware with new stuff. The whole market's changing. Look at Fortinet focusing on SaaS, Secure Access Service Edge. This move toward these integrated security solutions that combine networking and security features is huge right now.
SaaS. I've heard that term, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm not totally clear on what it means. Can you explain a little?
Sure. Think of it this way. S brings together things like SD-WAN, firewall as a service, secure web gateways, and zero trust network access, all into a single cloud-delivered platform. It's meant to secure access for users and devices, no matter where they are or what they're trying to access.
Okay, that makes sense, especially with so many people working from home now.
Exactly. The way we work has changed with these hybrid models. Traditional security boundaries don't really exist anymore. SaaS gives us a more flexible and adaptable way to protect a workforce that's spread out.
So firewalls aren't going anywhere. They're just evolving. But even with the best tech out there, we can't forget about the human factor. All those phishing emails, accidental data leaks, it seems like people are often the weakest link.
That's such a crucial point. You can have the most advanced security systems in the world, but if someone clicks on a bad link or falls for a social engineering scam, it can all be for nothing. That's why initiatives like Lamar University's Industrial Cybersecurity course are so important.
Right. That program's designed to give students the skills to protect critical infrastructure. It's a big responsibility, and it takes more than just technical knowledge.
Absolutely. You need to really understand the systems you're trying to protect, the threats that are out there, and the human behaviors that can lead to vulnerabilities.
It's like they say, security is everyone's responsibility.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the Maxar Space Systems breach. Even with all their expertise in satellite tech and security, they were still hit with a data breach that exposed their employees' information.
Which just shows that no one's immune.
You're right. And this breach really emphasizes how important it is to have layers of defense. Technology alone isn't enough. You need strong policies and procedures. And you need to train your employees properly to create a solid security posture.
Speaking of critical systems, the EPA's findings about vulnerabilities in water systems is a little unsettling. Over 100 million people could be affected.
It's definitely a serious problem. Water systems are a prime target for cyber attacks because they're so essential. Any disruption to those systems could be catastrophic.
And the vulnerabilities they found, exposed portals, outdated systems. It sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
It does. But the good news is that the EPA is working with CISA to fix these problems. They're offering training, funding, and technical help to water systems so they can improve their security.
That's good to hear. It's crucial that government agencies and critical infrastructure operators work together to reduce these risks.
It is. And let's not forget about insider threats, whether it's intentional or an accident. Insiders can cause a lot of damage.
You're right. Sometimes the biggest danger comes from within.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Organizations need to have strong access controls, monitor what their users are doing, and teach their employees about the risks of mishandling sensitive information.
And then there's BEC, business email compromise. It just keeps coming up. The iLearning Engine's attack shows that even smaller companies can be targets.
BEC is tricky because it takes advantage of trust. Attackers use social engineering to trick people into sending money or giving up confidential info.
And it works surprisingly well. The losses from BEC attacks are really adding up. What's the best way to protect against this kind of thing?
You need multiple layers of defense, strong email filters to block those phishing emails, multi-factor authentication to stop unauthorized access to accounts, and really strict verification processes for any financial transactions.
And don't forget about training. People need to know what to look for and what to do if they see a suspicious email.
Absolutely. Teaching employees about those red flags and encouraging them to report anything that seems off is a really effective way to reduce this risk.
Okay, so let's talk about the big one, ransomware. It's not going away anytime soon, is it?
I don't think so. Even with law enforcement getting wins like extraditing that Phobos operator Titsin, the demand for ransomware is still high. And the attackers are always finding new ways to do things.
So what can organizations do to protect themselves?
They need to be proactive. Regular data backups are essential. If you get hit with ransomware, a recent backup can save you. Strong endpoint security, vulnerability management, and network segmentation can also help prevent or at least contain attacks.
Having a clear plan in case something happens is also crucial, right?
Definitely. You need to know exactly what to do if you're attacked, who to call, how to isolate the affected systems, and how to get your data back from those backups. The more prepared you are, the better you'll be able to handle it.
And then we've got the whole world of IoT botnets, this waterbargist operation taking over thousands of IoT devices to create proxy networks. It shows just how vulnerable these everyday devices are.
It's a massive problem that's only getting bigger. People often connect these IoT devices to their networks without even thinking about the security risks. They often have weak passwords, outdated firmware, and not many security features. It makes them easy targets.
So what can people do to protect their IoT devices? Is it even possible?
It is. But it takes a little work. Change those default passwords, keep the firmware updated, turn off any features you don't need. Those are all basic things that can really improve security. And if you can, you should keep your IoT devices separate from your main network. That way, if one of them does get compromised, the damage is limited.
Good tips. You know, Zero Trust Security seems to be getting a lot of attention lately. There was that news about Zero Networks partnering with Alchemize to make it easier to adopt. Is this the future of security?
Zero Trust is definitely becoming more popular, and for good reason. It's a security model built on the idea of never trust, always verify. So every user and device has to be authenticated and authorized before they can access anything.
So it's like a much stricter way of doing security. No more assuming that anyone inside the network is automatically safe.
Exactly. And this is becoming more and more important as companies move to these hybrid work models and embrace cloud computing. Traditional security perimeters don't work in these environments. You need a more granular way to control access.
So Zero Trust is like building a fortress around every single user and device.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And this partnership between Zero Networks and Alchemize is interesting. They're trying to make Zero Trust easier for businesses to use. They're combining their technologies to offer adaptive microsegmentation and automated access controls. That can simplify how you implement and manage Zero Trust policies.
Sounds promising.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to vulnerabilities for a minute. Those Palo Alto networks, 0 days, exploited in Operation Lunar Peak. They're a reminder that even the most advanced security systems can have weaknesses.
They are. And what's really concerning about these vulnerabilities is that they allowed attackers to bypass authentication and escalate privileges, potentially giving them complete control over those firewalls.
It's like giving them the keys to the castle.
It is. And it shows how important it is for organizations to be proactive about patching vulnerabilities and having strong security controls. You can't afford to wait until you're attacked. You need to be constantly watching out for threats and taking steps to reduce risks before they can be exploited.
So staying informed is key.
Absolutely. Organizations need to know about the latest threats and vulnerabilities, and they need to have a process for deploying patches and updates as quickly as possible.
Speaking of things that need regular checkups, DNS. It's the foundation of the internet. But it's also a way for attackers to get in, like we saw with those sitting duck attacks.
Those attacks were really clever. They took advantage of DNS misconfigurations, which are often overlooked. By hijacking domains, attackers were able to send users to malicious websites for phishing or malware distribution.
So even something as basic as DNS can be a security risk.
It can. And it shows that organizations need to do regular DNS audits and use the advanced security features that registrars offer. They need to make sure their DNS records are accurate and secure, and they need to have measures in place to prevent anyone from making unauthorized changes.
It's also a good reminder for everyone to be careful about what they click on. A link that looks fine might actually lead to a phishing site on a hijacked domain.
You're right. User education is key to reducing that risk.
Okay, let's talk about mobile security. With so many people using smartphones for work, it's become a major target.
It has all that sensitive data on smartphones. Plus, mobile malware is becoming more and more sophisticated. Mobile security is now a top priority.
What are the biggest threats in the mobile world right now?
We're seeing all kinds of threats,
Yeah.
from phishing attacks sent through text messages to malware hiding in unofficial app stores, and vulnerabilities in mobile operating systems are also a big concern.
It sounds like it's a never-ending battle to stay ahead.
It is. Organizations need to have a comprehensive mobile security strategy to tackle these challenges. That means using multi-factor authentication, enforcing strong password rules, and vetting apps before they can be installed on company devices.
And we can't forget about educating employees. They need to understand the risks and how to stay safe on their phones.
Absolutely. User education is essential. Organizations need to train their people on mobile security best practices, like avoiding public Wi-Fi, watching out for suspicious links or attachments, and keeping their devices updated.
And there are also those mobile threat defense systems that can add another layer of protection.
Right. Those systems can spot and stop mobile threats in real time, giving organizations valuable insights into the security of their mobile devices.
It seems like we've come full circle, back to the importance of a multi-layered approach to security.
You got it. There's no single solution in cybersecurity. It's about combining different layers of defense, using technology along with strong policies and procedures, and educating users. That's how you create a resilient security posture.
Welcome back to the deep dive. It's been a wild ride through the world of cybersecurity today, hasn't it?
It really has. But even with all the threats and vulnerabilities we've talked about, there's some exciting things happening too, especially when it comes to AI and cybersecurity.
You're right. Everyone's talking about AI these days, and for good reason. Those announcements from Dell at Microsoft Ignite were pretty interesting. Apex file storage for Azure and AI services for Microsoft Copilot. It seems like they're really betting big on AI-powered security.
They are, and it makes sense. AI has the potential to completely change cybersecurity. It can automate tasks, analyze huge amounts of data, and detect threats that we might otherwise miss. Think about it. AI can go through mountains of log data in seconds, finding patterns and anomalies that would take a human analyst days or weeks to find.
So it's like having a superpowered security analyst working around the clock.
Exactly. And AI can do so much more than just analyze data. It can automate incident response, identify vulnerabilities, even predict future attacks.
That's amazing. But I can't help but wonder about the potential downsides. What's stopping attackers from using AI for bad things?
That's a valid point. Just like any powerful technology, AI can be used for good or bad. We're already seeing attackers using AI to create more sophisticated malware, automate phishing campaigns, and even make deepfakes for social engineering attacks.
So it's like an arms race then. The good guys using AI to defend and the bad guys using it to attack.
You could say that. That's why cybersecurity professionals need to stay ahead of the game. They need to know how AI is being used by both sides and develop strategies to mitigate the risks while also using the benefits.
It's like a game of chess where both players are constantly changing their strategies.
Exactly. And that leads us to a really important point. The future of cybersecurity is going to be shaped by AI. Whether we like it or not, AI is going to play a bigger and bigger role in both attack and defense.
So if you're in cybersecurity, you better get on board with AI.
I would definitely recommend it. Understanding what AI can and can't do, and the ethical considerations around using it, it's going to be essential for anyone in this field.
Wow, that's something to think about.
It is. But we also need to remember that AI is just a tool. It's not a magic solution. Cybersecurity is always going to require a multifaceted approach, combining technology with human expertise and a strong security culture.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of our cybersecurity news deep dive for today.
It's been quite a journey exploring the latest threats, vulnerabilities, and all the new things happening in the cybersecurity world.
A big thank you to our expert for breaking it all down for us.
It's been my pleasure.
Remember, staying informed is the first step to staying safe. Make sure you're following Cybersecurity HQ for all the latest news, in-depth reports, and job postings. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. Over 70,000 cybersecurity professionals read it every week.
Stay safe, everyone.
Until next time.